How you doing? Duff here. Today's automotive maintenance project is going to be replacing the valve cover gaskets on my 1999 Tacoma with a 3.4 liter V6 motor. My valve cover gaskets have been leaking for quite a while. The truck now has 152,000 miles on it. I bet they've been leaking for 2 or 3 years, and it's just getting to the point where it needs to be done. So I bought the gasket, and the gasket set, and I'm going to be undertaking that task today. To prep for it, I found another video on YouTube that covers the process. Look, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to come off, but I don't think it's anything that's beyond my technical abilities. I've already replaced the idle air control valve in this thing, so I've had the motor apart to a degree. Not to the degree I'm going to have to do this project, but I've replaced the plugs before, so I'm going to document this best I can and see how it turns out. You just look down here, you can kind of see the oil on the valve covers, both sides. Kind of see that. First thing I'm going to do, not sure that it's absolutely necessary, but I always like to remove electricity from the equation when I'm doing stuff under the hood, so I'm going to remove the negative battery terminal to the truck. Okay, next up I'm going to remove the air tube here. I'm going to disconnect all of the linkage that's used for the cruise control and the accelerator and all that kind of stuff. I've done all that before when I worked on the IAC, so it shouldn't be too complicated. So once I get that done, I will return. I actually have a problem here. This flange on my airbox broke off, and I just have it held in place with tape. I actually have a new airbox on its way. That's where this is where the mass airflow sensor sits. So, anyways, just wanted to point that out. Have the tube off. Next up is the linkage. Okay, hose is out. The linkages are disconnected. There's a number of vacuum hoses that need to be removed. And again, you just want to kind of keep a mental note of where they all go. It's kind of obvious because of the size that they'll only fit on certain spots, but still, there's probably in excess of half a dozen different vacuum hoses you're going to be disconnecting. Next up, I'm going to be removing the bolts and nuts that hold the top plenum on. Okay, there's a total of 6 bolts and nuts that are used to hold the top plenum on. There's one up here in the front corner. There's a nut there. There's 2 bolts. I'm sorry, the nut was here. 2 bolts here. There's another nut back here. And then there's 2 bolts that go on either side here. Removed all those. At that point you can lift the top plenum out as long as you have all of your vacuum hoses disconnected. One thing I wanted to mention, since there's a lot of parts that are coming off, I actually set up my folding table. I'm going to try to lay stuff out in an organized fashion so it's not so much of a guessing game when I put stuff back in, because it's usually kind of important that things get back where they came from. So that's my goal by utilizing this table. Top plenum is now released. When I flipped it up on end to get it off, you have to make sure to disconnect the air hose, and there's 2 gas lines. I haven't flipped back. There's one. Here's the other that connect into the bottom of the IAC. And if you're lucky like me, you also have a spider nest on the lower intake. It's exciting. So anyways, next up is removing the lower plenum. Okay, before removing the top plenum, there's a couple bolts on the side that you have to get off. Right here is where the ground was connected. There's 2 10mm bolts. Back here there's one further back that hold the fuel return line on. You got to get those off as well because the plenum lifts off this way. So the video I watched didn't mention this bracket here. There's some cables attached to it. I'm not sure what they are, but it looks like that definitely needs to come off as well, so I'm going to remove that. Another vacuum line to disconnect. Okay, for the lower plenum, again, everything with the plenums is 14mm bolts or nuts. I had to remove a nut here. I had to remove a bolt from here. Bolt, and there's a nut in the back corner here that had to come out. Disconnect that vacuum line, and now I'm going to try to lift it out. Okay, there's a little 10mm bolt there in the back that's connected to that plastic. Looks like it's almost like a shroud for the wires. I got to remove that as well. The lower plenum is now out. This is what it looks like with the stuff out. I'm going to put some rags over these holes just to make sure no shit falls in them. You never want shit falling in your engine. But then I'm going to start on the driver's side first. From what I understand, it's the more difficult of the two sides to get to access-wise, so might as well get the hardest shit done first. So I'll check back in a bit. Just to make sure I don't mess up stuff, simple stuff, you would think, like getting the spark plug wires back where they belong. I drew myself a little diagram showing me where the stuff goes. Because just from past experience, some of the boneheaded things that I've done, I find these kind of visual aids are helpful. One thing you'll realize that if you haven't changed your plugs in a while, you haven't changed your plug wires, this is the perfect time to do it because you're gonna have it ripped down to the point you would need to anyway. So it makes the job much easier. So if you replace your valve cover gaskets, plugs, and plug wires at once, you're smart. I've done my plugs and plug wires a few months ago, so I wasn't so smart. So continuing on. When you're removing the plug wires in the coil, this is the coil, you have to disconnect this little connector that's at the top. And you'll notice as I'm laying them out as they physically were placed in the engine, again, as a visual aid. As you get older, you need more visual aids. So, continuing on. Plug wires are out. Next, there's these wire looms have to be released so you can get to the bolts that hold the valve cover on. Notice my nice towel in the middle, or cloth in the middle. Okay, I have this wiring harness up and out of the way. I disconnected a fuel line that was here. There's a fuel line that goes here. I just disconnected it and pushed it up out of the way. One thing I've noticed is because this truck is, let's see, going on 14 years old, this plastic is very brittle. As I was pulling it out of the way, I mean, it's cracking, pieces are falling off, which I guess is to be expected. Hopefully it's not going to be a big deal, you know, because it is only plastic. I can't imagine it does much heat shielding. But I am glad that I have this piece of cloth over the intake here, because there were pieces of plastic that were flying out, and some could have potentially fallen into the engine, and that would have been really bad. So make sure you cover up these holes. Okay, so next I'm going to be actually going after the bolts. I can see why the driver's side is more of a pain, because a lot of this stuff you can't actually get it all the way out of the way. You just have to kind of work around it. So that should be fun, but let's see what happens. Okay, driver's side is off. It's a huge pain in the ass though. I got all the bolts off, and then when I went to lift it off, of course it was sticking because it hasn't been off in 14 years. It released, came up hard, and it broke tons of this this wire harness protector, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's more missing than intact at this point. It's so dry and brittle, it's crazy. I'm planning to just try to wrap the wires with some additional tape, I guess, you know, just to protect them better. It's not like this plastic would give them a lot of protection anyway, so so yeah, at this point I'm going to be putting the new gasket on. I took the old valve cover off and kind of cleaned it up a little bit. It was dirty because it was leaking oil, obviously. Hit it with spray clean. The thing that surprised me the most was how lightly these valve cover bolts were in. They're 10mm bolts, and I mean, they were so loose it was ridiculous. I mean, I guess they just work their way loose over time, but it felt like I could almost turn some of them out by hand. They were that loose. So I have a feeling the other side will be the same way. Trying to pull the cover out with all this shit around it is a pain in the ass. And again, part of the reason that this is so broken up. I have a feeling getting the valve cover back in with the gasket in place is going to be equally as large of a pain in the ass. So here we go. Alright, so my gasket kit came with new spark plug gaskets as well to go over the spark plug tubes. I would recommend that you just let the old ones in. These feel fine, and getting this one out was ridiculous. You have to pry back this little piece of metal, and then I had to go through a 15-minute prying session to try to get the old one out, just because, again, it's been in there for 14 years and it just does not slide out easily. I don't think it's worth it because, I mean, these look fine and they weren't leaking from the spark plug tubes anyways. So I'm just going to call this good enough. Okay, that's the replacement gasket in place. As you can see, it's molded to fit the contour of the valve cover. It specifically says in the box, do not use any additional adhesive to seal this. So I'm going to follow that advice and now try to get this thing back on, which I'm sure is going to be fun. That actually wasn't quite as bad as I thought it might be. When putting the bolts back in, you need to go to opposite corners. So I'm going to start in the back corner, and then I'll come to this corner, then I'll go to that corner, and I'll come here, and you just kind of crisscross, sort of like when you're tightening lugs on a wheel. And I'm going to definitely make sure that these are more snug than they were. Okay, the valve cover is all the way back in, screws are tightened. So you can see this wire loom just broke apart in my hand, so I just busted what was left off. I'm going to go buy one of those wire looms that kind of looks like this, and just put that around there instead. That should protect it enough. So I'm going to do the other side before I get to that, and supposedly this other side should be much easier. So I'm looking forward to it. Okay, the passenger side is a little bit better because you can disconnect a couple connectors here, and this kind of moves out of the way so you can get some more clearance to get to the actual valve cover. But it's not. I mean, it's not tons better than the other side, but it is definitely a little easier. So I'm going to pop this off and see how it goes. Other side's off. The loom on this side is falling apart. The loom for all the injectors is falling apart on this side, so I'll probably wind up just busting that off as well and replacing that with a generic loom. Passenger side valve cover with the new gasket in place. We'll now be putting it back on the truck. Well, it won't seem this way to you, but actually quite a bit of time has passed. As I was putting the last bolt in for the valve cover, of course I dropped down somewhere underneath the engine in one of these skid plates. I could not find it, crawled around, couldn't find it. So I just said screw it, and I went to AutoZone and I bought another bolt, and I bought the loom here to replace the one that is broken to hell from the disassembly process. So I'm going to put this conduit on to protect the wires for the injectors, and see how much I'm going to get put back together tonight. I'm not feeling like I want to sit out here till 8:30 and screw with this, so see how far I get. Here you see my replacement wire loom. This is 3/4 inch wire loom stuff. It's supposedly flame retardant. Bought it at AutoZone. It's $5. Okay, at this point I'm just basically reversing the disassembly process, crossing my fingers that I have a good recollection of where all the vacuum hoses went. For the most part, I mean, they can only really go one spot because of the size and their positions, so I think I'll be able to figure it out. But if I run into any challenges in the process, I will document that. Spark plug wires back in place. Lower plenum is back in place. No real gotchas there. Just remember to reattach that gas line there. I have to attach the ground yet, but so far so good. Remember, when dropping the upper plenum in, be sure to attach the hoses to the IAC before you try to flip it back down, because it's going to be impossible to do once you have it secured. So, just an FYI. Okay, everything is back together. Like I said, as long as you were paying a moderate amount of attention when you were taking everything apart, everything kind of makes sense as far as where it goes back together, because the vacuum hoses will be in the general vicinity of a outlet. Just plug it on and you're good. Make sure all your electrical connections are plugged back in. Yeah, it didn't take me nearly as long as I thought it would to put it back together, which is good. I'm going to now turn it on and see if it works. Hopefully, if it doesn't work, this was all a big waste of time. So let's try it. Cross your fingers. Okay, the good news is it started up normally, sounds normal. I don't hear any missing or like a high idle, which could mean a vacuum leak of some sort, so that all sounds fine. As far as the effectiveness of the new gaskets, can't really tell until some time passes to make sure that everything is sealed okay. But yeah, this was a tough job. The toughest part was, well, actually I shouldn't say that. The most dangerous part was all the brittle plastic that's around the wiring for the injectors. Make sure that you cover up the entrance into the intake with a rag or a cloth before you start screwing around with those wires, because I guarantee if I didn't, I would have had plastic fly down into that intake, and that would not be good. So please be sure to do that. I think my wire loom replacement that I put in there will do. I think it'll protect the wires adequately. I don't see why not. So that's it. If anything interesting happens down the line, I'll be sure to include it in the comments of the video. But for now, I'm calling this job a success. My total time invested, as normal, was much longer than I expected. I heard someone say 2 hours if you're a novice. I've been out here since, I don't know, 1:30, and it's 7. Of course, I did have to run to the auto parts store first to get some stuff, but anyways, it took me a long time, but I learned a lot, and again, it wasn't hard. You just need to be organized and remember where stuff goes. So that's it. Duffman out. Hope you found this enjoyable or educational, and once again, I am not a trained auto mechanic. I just do the best I can with the skills I have. So hopefully if this is helpful to you, and if it was, let me know. Thanks. Bye.